everyone, this is Adil. Today I would be discussing a new topic for you, that is cortisol. As we know, the cortisol is very important hormone and this is secreted by the adrenal gland. We will look which part of the adrenal gland secretes the cortisol. First of all, I want to give you the main introduction regarding the cortisol here. Here's your hypothalamus and this is pituitary gland. In the hypothalamus, there is a nucleus which is called paraventricular nucleus. Paraventricular nucleus, PVN. Here I have shown the paraventricular nucleus. It is a group of cell bodies. Now this paraventricular nucleus secretes a hormone which is called CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone. This corticotropin releasing hormone enter into the portal system which is called hypothalamo-hypophyseal portal system, and the CRH eventually reach to anterior pituitary, and in the anterior pituitary there are some cells which are known as corticotrophs. Here I have mentioned one corticotroph and it stimulates the corticotroph. Now CRH has binded to corticotroph. Now the corticotroph will be activated. Now what will happen? This corticotroph secretes a hormone, that is ACTH. Now this ACTH will enter into the blood. Here is the blood vessel. Now what will happen? This ACTH goes to our adrenal cortex. As I have shown you here, the adrenal gland. Adrenal gland has two parts, adrenal medulla and adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex has three layers. The first outer layer is called Zona glomerulosa, this one, and this layer is called Zona fasciculata, and this third layer is called Zona radicularis. This second layer is responsible to form the cortisol. Cortisol is a glucocorticoid. Now how it will act? Here I have shown the Zona fasciculata. It is in the blue color. I have zoomed out the one cell of the Zona fasciculata here. Here is the receptor for the ACTH. Now look at here. This ACTH will come and will bind to here. Now ACTH. This is your ACTH. When it binds to the receptor, this is a G-coupled receptor. G-coupled receptor. It is bound to G protein. G protein. Whenever the G protein gets activated, it activates another protein which is known as adenylyl cyclase, which is present in the cell membrane. Adenylyl cyclase. Now when this adenylyl cyclase gets activated due to G protein, what happens? This adenylyl cyclase converts ATP into cyclic AMP. ATP into cyclic AMP. Now this cyclic AMP, what it is going to do? It activates another protein which is known as protein kinase A. Protein kinase A. Now, first of all, I have told you this is the cell of the Zona fasciculata. Cortisol is a steroid hormone, so it should be synthesized from the cholesterol. Now, I will show you here the one cholesterol molecule. Suppose here is the cholesterol. The synthesis of cortisol will be from cholesterol. Now how the cortisol is synthesized, let me show you here. First of all, the first step, from the cholesterol there is the synthesis of pregnenolone. Pregnenolone. Then there is the formation of progesterone. Then there is the formation of 7-hydroxyprogesterone. 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 From the 7-hydroxyprogesterone, there is the formation of 11-deoxycortisol. 11-deoxycortisol, and from the 11-deoxycortisol there is the formation of cortisol, which is our final product which we actually want. Now here is the formation of cortisol, but remember one thing, there are certain enzymes which take part in the synthesis of cortisol. Suppose here is the enzyme first, here is the enzyme second, here third, here fourth, here fifth. Now, what the protein kinase A going to do? This protein kinase A activates this first enzyme, then second, then third, then fourth, then fifth. Eventually, there is a formation of cortisol. Now, before I talk about the effects of the cortisol, I want to mention here some points that why the cortisol is being synthesized and why it is being secreted. Now I will mention here the first thing that stimulates the paraventricular nucleus, which release the CRH, that is hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia. If there is low blood glucose level, that time the paraventricular nucleus is stimulated, or we can say that time cortisol is released. Okay, the second factor, the second stimulant of the paraventricular nucleus is the citrus. Look, if a student is having the final exams, he will have lot of fears. He will develop lot of stress. Due to this stress, he can stimulate this this paraventricular nucleus. From the paraventricular nucleus, there will be the release of CRH due to the stress during the final exams. Now, this was the second step from which the CRH is released. Now, the third step is when there is less cortisol in the body. When there is less cortisol. These were the stimulants of the paraventricular nucleus at which the CRH is released. Okay. Point which I want to mention here, that whenever a mother develops diabetes, if a pregnant woman develops diabetes, that is called the maternal diabetes. Let me write here. It's called maternal diabetes. Maternal diabetes. The baby which is inside the mother's womb, he is or she is prone to develop the diabetes, which is known as the fetal diabetes. From the mother, a baby can get a diabetes which is known as fetal diabetes. If a baby develops diabetes inside the mother's womb, what will happen? We know the baby is having the pancreas. Suppose this is the pancreas. Pancreas has different types of cells, like beta cells. Suppose these are beta cells. Beta cells secrete insulin. We know when there is diabetes, insulin is released. In babies, when there is fetal diabetes, at the same time insulin is secreted from the beta cells of pancreas. But remember one thing, there is an antagonism between the insulin and cortisol. they are against each other. Look, whenever there is secretion of the insulin, the cortisol will no more work. The action of the cortisol will be decreased. But cortisol is a very important hormone so far as our respiratory system is concerned. How it is important? Look at here. These are alveoli. Around the alveoli, we have a protein and lipid complex which is known as the surfactant. Surfactant is actually the complex of proteins and lipids. There is a one lipid which is known as sphingomyelin. This sphingomyelin is the part of the surfactant. If there will be any absence of this sphingomyelin, the lungs will be immature, or we can say these alveoli will not be functional. Okay, this cortisol is responsible for the synthesis of sphingomyelin. Now you can see here, if there is fetal diabetes, insulin will antagonize the cortisol and cortisol will no more work. When the cortisol is not working well, or we can say when there is low cortisol, in the absence of the cortisol, sphingomyelin will also be less. When the sphingomyelin is less, then surfactant will also be very less, or we can say it will be not good for the exchange of gases. We can say there will be low exchange of gases, and the baby will develop a disease which is called respiratory distress syndrome. Respiratory distress syndrome. And the baby will develop tachypnea, and the breathing of the baby will be like this. The breathing rate will be very high, that is tachypnea, and also baby will develop dyspnea, shortness of breath, and these babies we need to put on the ventilator. Okay, this was the clinical point regarding the cortisol, how the cortisol affects if there is deficiency of the cortisol. If there is low cortisol, what will happen to our lungs. Now we will see the cortisol effect on the GIT. Here is your GIT. This is the duodenum. This is the upper part of jejunum. We know calcium is absorbed by vitamin D. Suppose here is your calcium. Suppose which you take from diet. It comes here to duodenum and jejunum. Vitamin D is responsible to take the calcium into the bloodstream. Suppose here is your vitamin D. But this is the cortisol which helps to vitamin D to take the calcium into the bloodstream. One thing I want to say, if there is low cortisol, the vitamin D cannot be activated here to take the calcium into the blood. We can say at this time the calcium cannot be reabsorbed, and our bones will become deficient from the calcium, or we can say bones will become very weak, or they can become osteoporotic. So calcium is very important, or we can say for the activation of vitamin D to absorb the calcium from the GIT, the cortisol is important. Now we will see the other effects of the cortisol here. This cortisol is a steroid hormone. We know it is a lipid soluble hormone. It can easily cross the cell membrane. It is lipid soluble. Now it has crossed the plasma membrane. Now in the blood, suppose here is your bloodstream. Suppose here is your bloodstream. In the blood, it should be transported by a carrier molecule. it cannot transport, it cannot be transported without any help. Look at here, the cortisol, suppose cortisol is here, I will show it in the blue color. Here is your cortisol molecule. It is transported by a carrier protein which is known as transcortin. Suppose I will show you here. Suppose this is that transcortin. Transcortin. Let me write here. Transcortin. Albumins also can transport the cortisol. Albumins. Okay. Now finally, we will see the cortisol will go to our first muscles. In the muscles there are proteins. Let me show you here. Suppose here is your protein. In the bones, here is your bone. Inside the bones we have also proteins. Here is also protein. What is the effect of the cortisol on the proteins? Now, it causes breakdown of proteins into amino acids. The proteins will get converted into amino acids. Amino acids. Here again, the protein will be converted. Proteins of bone will also be converted into amino acids. Now what will happen? These amino acids will be they will enter into liver. It's the hepatocyte of a liver. Here is your amino acid now. Okay. This is the adipose tissue here. Adipose tissue or adipocytes. In the adipocytes there are triglycerides. Here I have shown one triglyceride molecule, here one, here one. Now, what the cortisol is going to do, what is the effect of cortisol on the adipocytes? Let's see. It will go to here also, adipose tissue. It will cause the lipolysis of the triglycerides. It will convert triglycerides into fatty acids and glycerol. Now what will happen? This glycerol molecule will enter into the hepatocyte. Glycerol. Okay. Now look at here. From the amino acids and the glycerol, we will get the glucose. The amino acids and glycerol will be converted into, let me show you like this. They will be converted into glucose. Okay. This process is known as gluconeogenesis. Formation of glucose from the non-carbohydrate sources. These are non-carbohydrate sources. So we call it gluconeogenesis. Neogenesis. Now, this was the effect of cortisol on the muscles, bones and adipose tissue. Now look at here. In the muscles we have glycogen. In the hepatocytes we have the storage of glucose, which is known as glycogen. This is the one glucose molecule, here one, here one, here one, here one. This is the chain of the glucose molecules, which is known as the glycogen. Glycogen is actually the storage form of glucose. Now, what the cortisol is going to do? Here you are seeing the receptor. This is the 7-pass receptor. Here is the neuron. this neuron secretes a hormone which is known as non-epinephrine. Non-epinephrine. This cortisol superactivates this receptor. It hyperactivates this receptor. When this receptor gets highly activated or superactivated, now this non-epinephrine will bind. When it will bind to this receptor, it will be highly activated. When it is highly activated, due to this receptor activation, or we can say due to the non-epinephrine, there is a process occurring which is known as glycogenolysis. Glycogenolysis. Let me write here. Glycogenolysis means breakdown of glycogen into glucose. Now again, this glucose molecule will be separated from the glycogen chain. This glucose molecule will be free. Now this will be formation of glucose here again. Now we got the glucose from the amino acids, from the glycerol, also from the glycogen due to the non-epinephrine. Now our immune system has lot of cells which are called immune cells simply. Suppose I will mention here one immune cell. Suppose this is our one immune cell. Whenever there is any infection, whether it's a bacterial infection or viral infection, that time these immune cells secrete some inflammatory mediators like cytokines, prostaglandins, or leukotrienes, TNF, tumor necrosis factor, and also histamine. And these substances call other cells to come at the infectious site and to fight against the infection. Look at here, the cortisol. This cortisol is immunosuppressive. It suppresses our immune cells. When the immune cells get suppressed, they will no more release the prostaglandins, cytokines, leukotrienes. When these substances are not released, if the patient is suffering from any infection, if any bacteria, whether it is virus, when it enters into our body, due to the immunosuppression, there will be no release of the cytokine. When there is no release of these substances, eventually what will happen? The other immune cells will not come here. They will not fight against the viruses and bacteria. Finally, a person may become sick. This was a function of the cortisol on the immune cells. The effect of the cortisol on immune cells is immunosuppression. Okay. Now look at here. We will see the effect of cortisol on the blood vessels. Here I forgot one point, that also the hypotension. If there is low blood pressure, that time this paraventricular nucleus is also stimulated, or we can say during the hypotension cortisol is secreted. Now look at here, what the cortisol is going to do, how it will increase the blood pressure. Look at here. Here is your neuron. This is the smooth muscle cell. Here is one smooth muscle cell, another, and these are the smooth muscle cells. On the smooth muscle cells, we have receptors, 7 class receptors. This neuron secretes a hormone that is non-epinephrine. Now, what will happen? Remember one thing, cortisol, non-epinephrine is a vasoconstrictor. When there is vasoconstriction, the blood pressure will increase. Now, how the vasoconstriction will occur? This cortisol is going to this receptor and it hyperly activates this receptor. when this receptor gets hyperly activated, now if the small amount of non-epinephrine will bind to this receptor, there will be vasoconstriction. There will be more vasoconstriction. When there is more vasoconstriction, the blood pressure inside the vessel will increase. Now you have seen there was the hypotension first. Due to the release of the cortisol, now the blood pressure gets normal. There will be increase in the blood pressure. If due to any condition cortisol increases, what will happen? Excess cortisol causes insulin receptor insensitivity. Suppose this is insulin receptor here. Due to the excess cortisol, these receptors don't work. Suppose here is your insulin. Insulin is secreted when there is excess amount of glucose in the blood. Now you see here, insulin cannot bind here. It will go out because the receptor is dysfunctional. What will happen? What was the function of insulin? Insulin takes the glucose, excess glucose from the blood into the hepatocyte. Now you see here, insulin receptor is dysfunctional. Insulin cannot work. Then what will happen? The glucose inside the vessel will increase. There will be hyperglycemia. The glucose will increase like a garbage, because in the blood glucose has not any function. It will accumulate like a garbage, like a dust. So such kind of increase in the glucose is known as the diabetes mellitus second. Diabetes mellitus second. So diabetes mellitus second caused due to the insulin resistance or dysfunctioning of the insulin receptor. Here one point want to mention, if there is increase in the cortisol, physiologically, if there is increase in the cortisol, this increased cortisol inhibits the paraventricular nucleus and there will be low production of the CRH. Eventually there will be low production of the cortisol. This was all about the cortisol. Hope you understood well. See you in next video. Thanks.